Good morning, everybody. It's your guy, Officer Dan. A lot of you know me from cars, weird. But today I wanted to talk about something that I've been into longer than I've actually been into cars. And that's PCs, as you might have noticed by this gigantic monstrosity to my left. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because I am beginning a new build and I have been amateurly building PCs since 2005. Like I said, long before I got into cars. It kind of struck my fancy, and it was nice because instead of dropping coin on a big unit, you could basically put yourself on a payment plan. I'm going to buy a motherboard this month, I'm going to buy the processor this month, I'm going to buy a case, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to buy that, and you spread it out over time and you make payments on it without paying any interest. It's great. So that's what I did when I originally built this very computer back in late 2005, early 2006. Now, I've built many computers for friends and family over the years. I've also built a new gaming computer for myself in 2013. I'm going to begin building a brand new computer as we speak. The parts are starting to roll in and I wanted to go over that build, so here I am documenting it for the internet to see. Now, one thing that I've always done with most of my personal builds since 2005 is some form of liquid cooling. In the case of my last two computers, it has been cryo cooling, so it actually uses Peltier devices to chill water lower than ambient temperature, because as you know, with a standard radiator setup, you can only go as low as the temperature in your room is. So if your room is 75 degrees, the water can only get to 75 degrees. But with the processor pumping out a bunch of heat, that's usually not going to happen. So you're going to be above that temperature no matter what. So there's a very large limit to what standard water cooling can do. That's why I kind of fell in love with these products from Cool-It. I have both the Free Zone and the Eliminator. These are both cryo-cooled products, and I will be combining standard water cooling technology, just basically a radiator and a pump, with the cryo cooling to see if it's going to make any kind of a difference for my new build. So basically I'm going to run the radiator into the cryo cooler out to the components in the computer and see if that actually makes a difference. So now that I've got the introduction of why I'm filming this damn thing in the first place, I'm going to go over this vintage ass build from 2005/2006. So first off, as you can see, I have a rice burnery case from NZXT. It looks kind of like an alien face. This was the first time that I'd actually went full rice and had lights on my case back in 2005. I had blue LEDs here. I have a blue LED back in the power supply fan, and I have two blue LEDs kind of lighting it from this direction. So this thing was fully sick back in the day. It also has a hideable front input support, as well as this, which gives you fan speed readout, etc., etc. So this was a pretty cool case for back in the day, albeit gigantic and ugly as hell. Now, I will say that I have redone this computer and fixed it and upgraded it over the years to keep it running. Therefore, the cable management / pretty much everything else in here is a shit show. So excuse my mess, it's just this computer has been patched and repaired for year after year after year. But it has been going strong since 2005. Well, 2006. The Peltier devices still work, they're still cooling. This bad unit right here that I had just mentioned is the cryo cooler. And this one, like I said, has been going strong since 2006. This is a Peltier device. Basically, it takes a large current, and on one side of a ceramic plate it's cold, and on the other side of the ceramic plate it is extremely hot. So the hot side is connected to these fins, and then a fan blows out the excess heat, while the coolant goes through the tubes through each Peltier device, of which there are 3 on this one, and it super cools it before it pumps it into the CPU block. Now, this is the Cool-It Eliminator. It was an awesome piece of technology. I do remember it was the most expensive thing that I bought for this computer, but I was just getting started into overclocking, and I just wanted something that I could have some headroom. And liquid cooling wasn't exactly case friendly back then. You couldn't put a radiator anywhere but on the outside of the computers. There was no, it just wasn't a friendly time for water-cooled PCs. So this was a really good solution, as it's very compact and it fits right there. I also have the first generation Crosshair motherboard. So I was working with the Crosshair 1 right here. It's a piece of history. This was their first attempt at a high-end AMD motherboard. And the processor powering this bad boy is going to be the AMD Athlon 64 5000 Plus. Came in right at around 2.6 gigahertz, so 2.6 bad boys. And it has served its purpose well all this time. I do believe I got it overclocked to around 3 with this liquid cooling pretty easily and stable. For the RAM, I went with 16 big old gigabytes of Kingston HyperX in blue. The graphics card is the NVIDIA 8800 GTS because I was too poor to afford a GTX, which was like $800 at that time. I think this was still a $400 and something graphics card, and it worked well for everything that I needed it to. Now, one thing that I was really pumped on was the power supply. Not only did it have cool blue LEDs in it, but it was modular, so you could actually unplug the cables that you didn't need and only plug in the ones that you did. This was kind of mind-blowing for the time because all of the other power supplies came with a big chunk of cables that you just had to hide somewhere. So I was really, really excited. I'd taken apart pretty much every PC that I'd ever had and hidden all those cables better, or moved them out of the way, or put them behind the motherboard, or hid them in the case somewhere. So having a modular power supply was fantastic. And this bad unit was coming in at around 650 watts. I do have an optical drive in this one, so I don't even think that it works. I think it's broken, like most optical drives do. I'm not going to install one in my new build. I did have one in my second build because 2013 CDs were still pretty prevalent. Now I haven't used one in God knows how long. I do have a 4 terabyte hard drive in here now, which of course has been replaced. I think the originally when I built this, I had a 500 gig in there, which was big for the time. So that was cool. I did have to put this on because of course it did not have any kind of Wi-Fi on its own. I also couldn't get these front panel inputs to work, so I had to install 2 PCI cards in the back for extra USB just to hold my mouse, my keyboard, and all the other accessories that I was running at the time. So that is my first PC build ever. I think I did a pretty fantastic job on it, albeit ugly and horribly cable managed. It always stayed cool, and to this day this CPU idles at around 9 to 10 Celsius, which is way below ambient temperature. Awesome. Now I may be using some of the parts from this PC because it really has no use any longer. It is here and it is an option just in case I decide to do so. Now, while this PC I built just for gaming, my next PC I built just for gaming, this PC I'm actually going to build for video editing and gaming. So super high on the RAM, super high on the storage, and cooling more than just the CPU. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm also going to be using PETG tubing instead of the standard soft tubing that I've used in all of my other ones. Now, these came as all-in-one systems where they were supposed to be non-serviceable, etc., 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 but the water did evaporate somehow, and I ended up having to redo all of the hoses on both of them at least twice. So it has required some effort to keep those things running, so I want to try to get a more serious solution for the water cooling. Now, while I'm not going to be using this PC any longer, I still will be using the one that I'm currently on. So, to take the Peltier cooler out, I have bought a single radiator and a single fan to complete the water cooling loop. So I wanted to see, since it's only cooling one device, I figured that should be enough. And I took a bunch of benchmarks beforehand on that old PC, and I want to see what's going to happen. As soon as that part comes in, I'm going to swap that, film all that, and then run the benchmarks on it again to see how much the heat rises in comparison to being cooled by a Peltier device. Now, since I'm currently using my other PC to edit this very video that we're talking about right now, and gaming and checking emails and surfing the internet and so on and so forth, I'm going to leave it where it is and not go over that on this bench. What I will do is go over the specs of said build right now. This PC I built in February of 2013. This was right after I got fired from my job at T-Mobile, and I was like, you know what? I got some extra cash. I'm gonna build myself another goddamn PC. Sticking with tradition, I went with the Asus Crosshair V Formula Z. Man, that is a complicated ass motherboard. But it was a really cool motherboard, had lots of weird cooling features, and I wanted to stick with what I knew worked really well for me, which was the original Crosshair. And I wanted to stay AMD because I'm a big fan of those guys as well. This time for the processor, I'd be going with the AMD FX 8350 Unlocked. And that thing was awesome. It started at 4 gigahertz. I ended up at one point overclocking it to a stable 4.8 gigahertz with the cryo cooling. That raised the temperatures up a little higher than I wanted to, so I would end up bringing that down to around 4.5 gigahertz stable. I was also running a Sapphire Radeon HD 7970 overclocked 3GB DDR5 graphics card, which, again, worked phenomenally. It wasn't super high-end, but it wasn't super bottom of the barrel. Now, for the RAM, I ended up going with 32 gigabytes of Corsair Vengeance Red. And I'm really, really glad that I did, because I ended up doing a lot of video editing on this computer, and that really, really helped with that. So I didn't need it at the time when I was just gaming, but it was on sale and I got it, and I'm really happy that I did. Now, to cool that AMD FX chip that I liked so much, I was using the Coolit Freezone Elite. Stupid name, but it was in a much more compact package than the one in my previous computer. It was a little bit more expensive, and I really, really liked it. So I got it, and that's what cooled the CPU off. All of that was powered by the OCZ Fatality, spelled with a 1, 750 watt modular gaming 80 plus bronze power supply, which powered everything that I need and still had plenty of headroom left over afterwards. Again, it was modular, so super pumped on that. All of that was stuffed into a CM Storm Scout gaming mid-tower computer case, and I will say that it does look a lot better than the NZXT in my first build. It performed a lot better, and my cable management skills were a lot better as well. Now, this one has again been redone, fixed, upgraded, and messed with over the years, so it is a little bit more messy than when I originally built it. It is still a ripper. It's still coming in right at around 4.2 gigahertz. So since 2013, this computer has been faster than most of the computers that have come out over the years. Stoked on that. And it still screams. It's not high-end, mind you, but it does everything that I need it to still to this day with no problems whatsoever. Now, while I can't play all the games at ultra settings, I don't need that in my life, but it does play them at medium to high very, very well at 60 frames a second. Now, while I could just get a new graphics card and toss some better RAM into this thing, I know I could overclock it again. I wanted to just kind of leave it as is and build a new PC because that's what car guys do. We're always interested in the next project. So, while I am going to be robbing the CPU cooler off of that one, I will be leaving it intact almost wholly, other than maybe taking some of the hard drives out of there, because I have about 16 gigabytes of storage in that thing that I'm probably going to be using in this new build. And speaking of new builds, every time I get the itch to build a computer, I usually surpass that and don't build one. A long time ago, I went over to my buddy Robbie's house in California, and he had something like this. I believe it was the Core P3 platform, but I'm going to need a little bit of extra space for the cooling that I wanted to do, and I am going with the Thermaltake Core P5 Titanium Edition, which just means that it has tempered glass instead of the plastic that everybody says scratches on it. So I'm super, super excited. I'm gonna unbox this real fast so you guys can actually see what it looks like. That is a lot of shit to unbox. Now I've spared you the actual unboxing of this thing, but this is the Thermaltake Core P5 Titanium Edition in all of its glory. It comes with a lot of shit. All of this makes for a very expandable, very customizable, very unlimited way to build a computer. You can leave it down like this, you can have it be vertical, you can mount it to the wall. So there are lots of ways that you can actually do this. I'm going to be mounting this one to the wall just because I like the way that looks and it keeps it away from the riffraff down underneath. Now this case was designed to be used for liquid cooling. And that's what I'm going to be focusing on with this build, so that makes sense. You wouldn't want to really do this with air cooling because there's not going to be a whole lot of cross flow coming in or out or across the board. So the motherboard's going to be water cooled, the graphics card's going to be water cooled, and the processor's going to be water cooled. I was going to do the RAM, but then I decided, ain't nobody got time for that. And the RAM will be fine. Now this Titanium Edition is a really cool looking kind of gray sparkle or titanium, and it's not rough, so it's not going to catch on like your fingernail or if you rub a piece of plastic across it, or it's not going to collect dust as easily as some of those rougher cases. So that's good as well. It comes with tons of brackets, tons of mounting options. You can even flip your graphics card so that it's, if you're hanging it vertically, the graphics card's still sitting up and down due to the use of this cable, which everybody says sucks. So I'm going to get the upgraded version of this because everybody says it's garbage. You can run an ITX, an ATX, and a micro ATX on this. Don't know why you'd want to run a micro ATX on this because there's so much room, it would kind of look awkward. But I guess if you wanted to put even more cooling options on, you could do so. It's got brackets and plates and holes and places to run cables and everything that you could want to do a custom build. It also comes with a set of instructions so that you know where this smorgasbord of brackets and accessories actually go on the damn thing. This is going to be my first foray into bending PETG tubing, so this is going to be exciting. As the parts start rolling in, I will start doing this. I'm going to start with the radiator feeding into the cryo cooling, and that's where I'm going to start everything. So I have to wait for a bunch of stuff to come in. I just wanted to kind of introduce this as the computer that I'm building. In the next video, which I have no idea how many videos this series is going to be, I'm going to retrofit the radiator and fan onto that, do some benchmarking, and see how much more efficient the cryo cooling was than just regular air to water. So that'll be kind of interesting to see, because right now this PC in front of me that's going as we speak is idling at like 11 Celsius. And 11 Celsius is 51 degrees. It is definitely not 51 degrees in this room, so that is way below ambient temperature. So what I'm hoping is that because I'm going to be cooling more stuff, and I know that that's been proven, that doesn't matter what order you do stuff in your loop, the radiator can only keep so much cold. And again, it can only be ambient. So my hope is that I'm going to feed all of these components into a cylinder, and then the cylinder is going to feed into the radiator. The radiator should cool down the coolant enough to make the cryo cooler more efficient. That's all I'm asking for, is that the cryo, I'd like to be idling at single digits, like in the 40s. 40 degrees would be a fantastic idle point for me. I mean, that's 8 degrees above freezing. Even as it sits right now at full tilt boogie, when I was running the stress test, after 15 minutes you could still touch the water block and it's cold to the touch. So I mean, it really, really works. I just wanted to see if I could increase its efficiency by putting a radiator in front of it. But we'll find out once it's actually all said and done. So I hope you enjoyed that brief jaunt into my PC building history that started way back in 2005. I know lots of people have been doing it a lot longer than that, and technically I've only built, I'd say 7 or 8 PCs. Again, some for friends, some for family, and 3 for myself. So I really want to take my time with this one and make it as perfect as I possibly can. I'm probably going to go through tons of PETG tubing to get the bends right and get the process down, but that's okay. I love doing this stuff and it's a learning process. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode where I tear down my old computer and start messing with stuff. This is Officer Dan, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side, or probably back into a car or doing a scotch and a beer. Peace.